Are you an agent struggling to understand real estate economics? Would you benefit from learning how top agents structure their businesses? Then you've come to the right place. And welcome to another edition of the Nerdy Agent Podcast, where we teach you the basic economic and business principles you need to thrive in today's real estate market. I'm your host, Luke Pettersen, with my brothers and fellow nerds, AJ and Josh. Second podcast of the day, guys.
Yeah.
Guess
what we did this morning? We bought a house.
We did buy a house.
Oh, that's
morning.
right.
I was like, we shot a podcast this morning.
I was like, I should open with that. And you guys are like, wait, what? We bought a house this morning? Yeah, we bought another house this morning.
We did buy a house. That's 16, I believe.
16 or 17. We have debate on
16.
this. I think it is 16.
Emily thought it was 17 too. I said, no, it's pretty sure it's 16.
We should probably know the answer to that question.
Also, side note, one more sleep.
Until Luke goes to Italy.
I'll be in Arizona too.
There you go. Let's get into the Would You Rather of the week, which I will say I think this is my favorite Would You Rather you've ever put on here, Josh. It's your first year of real estate. Would you rather sell 10 houses for $200,000 each or 2 houses for $1 million each?
We all know the answer to this question.
I know my answer, and I don't know.
So I'm going to sell those 10.
I think I would be willing to bet you that if you asked 100 agents, like, you know, we're polling 100 agents.
95 would pick 2 houses.
That'd be an
and they'd
awesome
all be
poll.
wrong.
And they'd all be out of business on their second year because they have no referrals. So I'm going to sell the 10, and then those 10 are going to send me 5 the next year.
But what you're missing on there, too, is it's your first year of real estate, so you also have no experience.
Yeah, so I got 10 years, 10 houses of experience.
That's what I'm saying. Like, the 2 houses gives you, like, no experience.
And you're probably not doing a great job for your $1 million clients that your first 2 house sales.
No.
I'm hoping that of my 10, I've got at least 1 down payment assistance and
FHA
two really tough inspections, a little VA, FHA action.
Maybe someone backs out in an inspection period, so you can learn kind of what that looks like.
But like, how many times have we heard people come in and be like, I just want to sell luxury? It's like, well, how about you get experience doing what you're doing? You build your client base, you build referrals. If you fall into luxury, you fall into luxury. But like, everyone wants to chase the dollars because you make more money on each sale, but get good at what you do, get clients that can then create a business for you and go from there.
Being a real estate agent is not a get-rich-quick scheme. However, if you're really willing to put in the work, we have an awesome team here called the Advisor Realty Group, and we are adding agents and scaling quickly. So message us, DM us. We would love to have you. And today,
shameless plug.
And today we are getting a little bit less nerdy. With the new year rolling around fast, pending sales down, we wanted to discuss the truth about how many real estate agents fail in the real estate industry and how to ensure that you're not one of them. To start, I wanted to talk about the numbers, just so we have an idea. How many agents are there in the United States and Minnesota specifically right now?
And we might as well talk, when we say fail, we might have to set
not
criteria for that,
sure.
right? What defines not making
out of the industry, I would say, but there are people.
But
in the
there are
industry
1.5 million real estate agents right now in the United States, and 22,000 in Minnesota. So it's a staggering amount when you consider there are only 753,000 homes available for sale in the U.S.
So let's repeat that: 750 homes available, 1.5 million.
Question.
realtors.
I just have one question. Can you sell half a house like you can get half a sack in football?
Yes, you can. If you were on
a co-listing agent,
one of the big teams that does the co-listing agent thing, you get half of a sale for that.
You could half sale. So
but the reality is yes, the math is pretty clear there, right? We're good at math. That's why we did this podcast. So there are twice as many agents as there are available homes for sale in the U.S. right now,
which is crazy. And how has that number changed over the years?
So it's weirdly been growing. I mean, I guess you say weirdly. The market's been hot. When the market's hot, things grow. In 2010, there were just over 1 million agents. So we've added almost 50% since 2010. Now, part of that is we lost 350,000 agents after 2007, 2008. So it dropped from like 1.3 down to about 1 million, just under 1 million. But now we're over 1.5, which is like an all-time high. And just in the last year, from 2020 to 2021, so excluding 2022, we added over 100,000 new agents. So, it's when real estate market is hot, everyone wants to get in, right? But now we're going to see a huge decline, likely in the next year or two, because the reality is the real estate market's not really hot anymore. And so if you're running into this pool and then the pool shrinks by 40%, it's probably not a very fun pool to be in.
And I want to get into the nitty gritty of kind of what Minnesota is too. I know we talked about the U.S. numbers. I think that's helpful for people, but we're in the Twin Cities like we talk about a lot. And tell us like the facts about how many sales there are in the U.S. and Minnesota, but specifically I want to start talking about Minnesota as well.
I may have to edit some of the stats, the calculations that we have down, because we have to keep in mind that every sale has how many agents? Two sales. So
fair.
So all of the sales. So typically, in the whole state, we're seeing around 80,000. I think in the Twin Cities, we're seeing around like 65,000 sales per year. Yep, and that jumped to 90,000 in 2020 in the whole state again. But it will be dropping down to the historical average this coming year. We're down 30-40% every week. We track pending sales. They're kind of doing the same thing. In the U.S., the total number of sales ranges from like 5 to 6 million sales per year. So that's kind of like the big picture numbers, if you will.
And so when you're talking about 80,000 sales, 2 agents per, so you're saying essentially like that's like 160 possible options.
Yeah, essentially what it's saying though is when you think about it, numbers of agents versus numbers of sales, Minnesota versus the U.S., the reality is there's about 4 to 5 total houses sold per agent in both cases. So, that's if you double that because there's twice as many transactions happening per person, you're still talking about 8 to 10 sales per agent happening within the year.
So
one per every. Sorry, 2.
I would say what's that number? So how many sales in Minnesota do we have per agent?
We would have about 4 sales per agent. So you could say the average agent. I mean, we've always said the average agent sells like 6 to 8 houses.
Yep.
Which is
but
about
in Minnesota,
true.
We're
it's
at
up.
About 4%.
It's up right now because the sales were higher. I think we're going to see that come back down to like.
But
that
the
5 or
average
6
agent
number.
doesn't sell 6 to 8 houses because we think that's the average agent, but it's about the top 10% that's selling that.
If you took a look at the median, you'd probably see a much lower number.
Yeah.
Sure, totally.
So how you calculate statistics matters.
Yes. And 4 to 5 sales per agent is roughly about, I think we have like 30K per year. If every single person, we just split the pie
evenly
between every agent, that's about what we'd make per person.
The median income for an agent is around $50,000. Median income.
And the average is a lot lower, I believe.
It depends how it gets calculated, probably. If you're counting the half of that 1.5 million number that don't even sell a house, then yes, probably would be lower. But if you look at the median, I guess, I don't know.
The top end is going to have a lot, though, too. The median's a much more important number because that's saying, like, the average agent in the marketplace, the one who's just decent, is making about that amount.
Yep. Sure. And so then just touch back on this again. I want to know what's the top 10% of agents are selling over how many houses a year?
So it's super top heavy. And this is a stat, again, we don't have like our reference point on this, but I saw a guy that dug into this and gave the numbers on each like bucket of number of sales. And it was like 0 to 3, 3 to 6. Well, it was 0. Then it was 0 to 3, 3 to 6, and 6 plus. And he had calculated that only about 10% sell more than 6 houses.
So 90% of agents sell less than 6 houses.
It's a super, and this is in a book that I was listening to right now. It's like the 80-20 principle. That, I mean, if you look at, like his example was like 20% of the people pay like 90% of the taxes in the United States.
Sure.
You look at any given marketplace, it usually ends up being like an 80-20 type deal. In this case, maybe like a 90-10 type deal, that 10% of the agents sell about 90% of the real estate.
And a lot of these numbers as well, and obviously that number makes sense, but a lot of the sales numbers, like how many sales we've had, what the average amount might be, what the median amount of sales is per agent, are from markets. I want to make sure people understand this, from because this is like the last 10 years we're basically talking about, an ever increasing market. Every year there's been more sales because since 2008, the market's only been going up essentially. Obviously it ebbs and flows. And so one would assume that when we start to see less sales for kind of the first time in a decade, we're going to see a lot of agents exiting the industry in the next 12 to 24 months. And we talk about how, with how many people we're bringing on the team, how many agents we talk to in general, we're already seeing agents we're talking to on other teams that are just exiting the industry.
And we've talked about this before too. It's not just a realtor specific problem. It's a American specific problem that most people don't have a ton of margin, whether that's margin as their family as a business or margin of time or whatever, right? They just don't have a lot of space. And so if you see sales go off 40% and they're just average, they're going to lose 40% of their income, and they're going to either have to get another job or find another way to make income because they probably are using most of the money that they were making before.
Yep. And so what I want to talk about now that they kind of have a base knowledge of count sales, I want to talk about how the listeners can ensure that they're not one of the ones that are leaving this industry in the next 12 to 24 months. And how I want to do that is chat through, if we were to make a list of items, essentially, like what are the things you have to do? Because in a down market, you should focus more on what you need to do to produce sales versus everything else, right? And my main man, Tom Ferry, I've listened to just about every single business planning podcast he's had for 2023. And his big point this year is that you can only accomplish, if you want to have 10 goals for 2023, you're about 3% chance of getting that done. But if you have 3 goals and you do everything you can to just do those 3 things all year, you have like a 75% chance plus of doing them. So I want to talk about what the 3 things, in your opinion, we have some written down. They are different per person on what people should be doing to ensure that they can create sales in 2023.
Want to hear my 3?
I want the 3, yeah.
That I would give any agent?
Yeah.
They can be different than what you've written down.
They can be different than what you've written down. We've written these down.
2 of yours I'm going to keep, which are prospecting. So whether that's getting online leads, I think open houses could really be lumped into prospecting. Just getting in front of people that you don't know.
Yep.
Is an important one. Meeting with your sphere is another very important one. If you haven't been doing that, I would suggest if you've got 100 people, you're meeting with 5 of them a week at the very least, maybe more going into this year, because that's the number one way to get a business off the ground. And you have to get more at bats to get more leads right now. So if sales are down 30, 40%, you've got to do 30 to 40% more activity to get those leads. And I think the third thing.
That's a really fun point. Say that one again. Sales are down
30 to 40%. So you have to work 30 to 40% harder to get the same number of sales.
I love that.
So we tell people if you have 100 friends and 10 of them were going to buy a house last year, only 6 to 7 of them will buy a house
also
this
a great
year.
number.
So you need to talk to 150 friends
But
now.
6 to 7 of them are going to buy a house this year. And how many people did you meet with last year? Because it probably wasn't that many.
No.
So you could theoretically get all 6 to 7 where you didn't even get all 10 of them because you weren't meeting with them maybe.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're not meeting with your friends right now, you have almost 0% long term.
And so
third,
I just love that.
Can I get my third thing?
So meet with your sphere. You said about 5 a week.
At least. If you have time for more, meet with 3 and 10 if you can.
So then you also talk about prospecting, open houses. I want to know numbers. So like obviously if you're in a situation where you have leads, you should be following up and calling them every single week.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing open houses, like what should people be doing for an open house?
You should at least do 1 every single week.
That's what I was thinking.
Is what I would say.
Okay.
And figure out your strategies about how you're going to do it and set actual goals around how you're going to execute and how many sales you're going to get from it. Mm-hmm. The third thing, which is kind of a funny one because it lumps in a lot of things, but would be figure out what you're going to do when you have nothing to do. Because whether it's a good market, a bad market, the number one way that I've seen agents fail, if you will, or get out of the business or not be successful is they have nothing to do, and so they do nothing. Rather than, I have nothing to do. I'm going to go to an inspection. I'm going to go learn more about this thing. I'm going to research this thing. I'm going to go meet with this person. Like, if you have nothing to do, you should be filling your time. If you can't figure out how to work 40 hours next year, you're not going to be successful.
And so what Tom Ferry would say on those 3 items, he'd say, open houses, 1 a week. And then you just go, check, I did my 1 for this week. Meet with Sphere, 5 a week. And then you write down all the names underneath it every single week. So you're doing that. And then on your business plan, you'd write nothing to do, ? And you could literally, right now, you could think about every single thing that you could be doing when you have nothing to do. And then you go, I have nothing to do. And then you just go back to your business plan and you go, I'm gonna look at inspection reports today.
Bingo.
Yep. Do we have any other than, do you have different opinions than the 3?
Well, my biggest thing is, this is a little bit outside of it. It kind of talks about what we're talking about here, but like having a routine, right? So if you don't have a base routine, that's when you're going to find this, like, I have nothing to do thing. You don't wake up, you don't have a plan for the day. You kind of just let the day float by. You're never going to have success, especially when the market's slow, because you're just going to kind of float through the day. And then understand where your business comes from. So you need to understand how you're having success. If you're a brand new agent, the odds are good that your sphere's not going to just fall into your lap, especially right now, because they'll have more options to choose from. So finding a team, for example, and finding someone who's going to give you leads and finding someone who's going to teach you the ropes, I think now is more important than ever, because if you don't have that and you're just in your first year and you have nothing to do, you might figure out from a Tom Ferry podcast what you think you can do for the day. Yeah. But having actual mentors and coaches that can guide you is going to be really, really important.
I want to come back to the team thing, because the first thing you said actually there was I think really smart, because we're not only talking to first year starting agents, we're talking to somebody who sold 30 houses next year or this year, right? I mean, I'm at 35 for this year, and I'm telling the other agents, like, I am hyper focused on everything I need to do next year to sell the same amount of houses, because it's going to be more difficult.
Yep.
And so if you're not doing this, people who have sold enough houses, take your sales and then figure out where each of them come from and bucket them. And maybe you might start seeing some trends on where they're coming from that you didn't know that you can double down back on.
Exactly.
Right? If you did 10 open houses last year but got 5 clients, you should definitely be doing more open houses in 2023. If you get less Sphere people, maybe you meet with more Sphere people, what have you.
Absolutely.
But essentially, just making sure you're bucketing that is a really good point. And then the last thing we did want to talk about was the team. So I wanted to get more into that on how can people find a good team and kind of how should they be vetting people?
I just leave that. That's fine. So I would say, I mean, if you're going to join a team, figure out, someone who has opportunity. I think there's a few things we talk about that teams can provide. The first one they can provide is mentorship. So if you're just starting a team, that's kind of all you can have. You might not have a huge budget to buy leads. You might not have a huge staff, but you can say, I've sold 100 houses, so I know what I'm doing. Come with me and I'll help you understand how you can do the same thing. Then the second, step in the growth of a team would be staff. I'd say maybe systems and staff. So having a transaction coordinator that actually has a system in place to make sure every transaction coordination experience is exactly the same is the second thing people can, a team can offer you. And the third is opportunity. So a fully mature team should be able to offer all three of those things. If you are just starting, you're brand new, and you don't know what to do, you probably want to look for a team that's like that, that's fully matured.
And by opportunity, the last one you had on there, you're talking about leads.
On online leads, at bats, whatever, right?
Listings that you can do open houses at.
Exactly, right? That's a great example.
Yep.
Trainings, all that kind of stuff, right? So there's all that. That's like a fully matured team that's well-oiled offers those. If you're just like, market's slowing down and I feel lonely, that might not be your best fit for a team. Maybe you just want to group up with, somebody in your office and create your own little system where you guys are mentoring each other. So there's different things based on your specific situation, I think, that are really important to know. But if you do want that fully built out team, they need to offer all three of those things.
I think what I think we pride ourselves on, right? If you look at that number of only 10% of the agents are selling over 6 houses a year, pretty much every full-time agent on our team sells over 6 houses a year, right? So to be able to get all of our people into the top 10, what that speaks to me at least, is if you're newer and you're struggling to get to that 6 number, find a group of people who can A, inspire you to get there because everyone around you is doing it. So you're like, I'm not meeting what everyone else is doing. Or B, has enough opportunity, to AJ's point, that you can just get on board and be like, oh, well, I wouldn't have gotten there by myself, but because of all of these systems and leads and things like that are coming my way, it's easy for me to get there, right? There's no reason why every agent that joins our team shouldn't sell 12 houses in their first year.
And I think the other thing too is focus on, like you said, the would you rather question. Focus on the number of opportunities you're going to get to learn stuff, and focus on the potential income, not the split. So I think a lot of agents get real hung up on, well, I can go to this company and get 100%. And I say, well, you can get 100% of one or two transactions or 0 transactions, but I should know the actual number, but to your point, I think the average agent that's at least in their first full year or later is probably selling about 20 homes a year on average. So, our average across the board is about 15 sales with our 25 agents. So
the other one that Tom Ferry's loving this year for 2023 is 5 and 10 year visions, because it's going to be harder in the next 2 years, but everything you do in the next 2 years will produce in 5 and 10 years. And if you're thinking about this as a 10-year job, it's now a career.
Well, you can get into this to do this for 2 years, right? Because the worst part is the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The first 2 to 3 years is the worst part, but after that, it should be rolling from that.
But keep that in mind. Everything you're doing, even when you're working 1.5 times harder for the same amount of sales, it's because you're working for 10 years down the line, because it's not always going to be this way.
And that's why it's far more important to sell 10 $200,000 houses than 2 $1 million houses.
There you go. And that's all we have for you today. The line of the day and the line of the week, and I think the line of 2023 is, when sales are down 40%, all you have to do is work 40% harder and you'll sell the same amount of houses. We'll see you next week on the Nerdy Agent Podcast. And remember, be better.